This is a story of two friends, Michael and George, who lived together in London and worked for the same company. However, their interests were very different. George loved parties and going to clubs, while Michael had a passion for collecting antique and ancient items. One day, an auction for antique items was taking place at a library in London. Michael was excited to attend and asked George if he would join him, but George declined, saying he was going out with his girlfriend. So, Michael went alone to the auction. Upon arriving at the library, Michael saw that all the items being auctioned were extremely expensive, and the bidders were wealthy individuals placing high bids. Michael thought he wouldn't be able to afford anything, but then he noticed an old mirror that no one was bidding on except for one man, who was offering a very low price. Michael decided to place a bid slightly higher, and to his surprise, he won the mirror for just $40. Overjoyed, he took the mirror home. Later, when George returned home, Michael showed him the mirror. George was shocked at how cheap the mirror was, as it seemed like it should have been much more expensive. Michael placed the mirror in the bathroom, thinking he might sell it for a profit later when he found a good buyer. That night, George woke up to use the bathroom. As he washed his hands, he screamed and ran back to the room, waking up Michael. George explained that while washing his hands, he could not see his reflection in the mirror, only the bathroom wall behind him. Michael, exhausted and irritated, dismissed George's concerns and told him to sleep, thinking George was just tired. The next morning, George went to the bathroom again, but everything seemed normal, and he concluded that his experience the previous night was just a figment of his imagination. That evening, Michael was too tired to eat and went straight to bed, while George made himself a small dinner and sat in the living room. As George ate, he noticed a faint shadow outside the window. He received a message on his phone, and when he looked back at the window, the shadow had moved closer, almost right up against the glass. Frightened, George looked closely at the shadow, but realized it had no feet, and he understood that it wasn't a shadow at all, but rather a reflection in the window. He turned around to find no one behind him. Dismissing it as his imagination again, George decided to relax by watching a movie on his laptop. But as soon as he opened the laptop, a hand reached out from the screen and grabbed him, trying to pull him inside. Michael witnessed the horrifying scene and rushed to close the laptop, saving George. Both were terrified, and George insisted that the mirror was cursed. He suggested they return it, but Michael, wanting to make money, thought they should sell it instead. The next day, both Michael and George took a day off work to find the man who had bid on the mirror during the auction. They went back to the library, found the man's contact information, and visited his house. The man bought the mirror back, but for a very low price. He revealed to them that the mirror was haunted. After returning the mirror, Michael and George thought the nightmare was over. But later that evening, George's behavior changed. He dropped a bottle in the bathroom, and when Michael asked what had happened, George said it was nothing, just an accident. George then left the house, saying he was going for a walk. But when Michael woke up the next morning, he found George unconscious in the bathroom, with the mirror, which they had returned, back on the wall, broken, as if someone had come out of it. Michael rushed George to the hospital, where he learned that George had fallen into a coma. Desperate to save his friend, Michael returned to the library and told the caretaker the whole story. The caretaker explained that the mirror was a portal for spirits from another world. 40 years ago, a man had summoned 3 spirits through the mirror, and the people whose bodies the spirits took had fallen into comas. The spirits could only be defeated if their doppelgangers, who had taken their place, were either returned to the mirror or killed. The caretaker helped Michael track down the man who had sold them the mirror, and they found him in a strange house in the woods. Inside, they discovered the mirror, and as they approached it, Michael heard a familiar voice. It was George's voice, warning him that the man was coming. Michael and the caretaker hid, and when the man entered the house with George's doppelganger, they attacked, forcing the doppelganger back into the mirror and handing the man over to the police. The next day, George woke up from his coma, seemingly back to normal. However, as Michael read the newspaper that morning, he was horrified to see 2 alarming headlines. The man had escaped from jail again, and the haunted mirror had disappeared from the library.